When the mighty Roman Empire withdrew its legions from Britain in the early 5th century, it left behind a ghost of a land. Stone roads stretched across empty fields, Roman villas stood in silence, and the great walls that once defended civilization began to crumble under the weight of time. For nearly 400 years, Britain had been a proud province of Rome, civilized, prosperous, and guarded by legions of iron discipline. But when the empire began to crack, its outposts were left to fend for themselves. The year was 410 AD. The Emperor Honorius, fighting for his throne against countless enemies, sent a message to the Britons, a message that sealed their fate. Defend yourselves as best you can. With those words, Rome was gone. No more soldiers, no more ships, no more empire. Britain was abandoned, and as the Roman eagles disappeared beyond the horizon, a chill settled over the island. The people who had once lived under Roman law and Roman gods now faced a new age, an age of fear, hunger, and invasion. The fields went untended. The cities emptied. Wolves prowled through once great towns. The light of civilization flickered, and in its place came darkness. But out of that darkness, across the gray northern seas, came new sails, painted, curved, and bearing the faces of dragons. They carried with them warriors from the misty lands of the north, the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes. They did not come as friends. They came to conquer. The Roman world had ruled through order, but by the late 4th century, order had turned to chaos. Corruption drained its wealth, civil wars tore it apart, and barbarian armies pressed on every border. For Britain, cut off from the heart of the empire, the fall came swiftly. Roman governors vanished, villas were abandoned, and old tribal rivalries reignited. The Britons, who had long looked to Rome for protection, were now left to face a brutal new reality. The walls that had once held back invaders now crumbled. The Picts raided from the north, the Scots from across the sea, and pirates from distant shores. The island was bleeding, leaderless, and desperate, and desperation led to a fateful decision: to invite foreign warriors for help. From the cold, wind-swept shores of Germania and Denmark came the warriors who would change Britain forever. They were the Angles, the Saxons, and the Jutes, fierce seafarers, armed with axes, shields, and a hunger for land. A British leader, known in legend as Vortigern, sent word across the sea. He offered land and gold to the Saxons if they would defend the Britons against the northern raiders. And so the first longships landed on Britain's eastern shores. The warriors stepped onto the sand, their shields gleaming, their eyes scanning the land that would soon become theirs. At first, they fought as allies, driving back the Picts and Scots. But alliance soon turned to ambition. They saw the weakness of their hosts, the richness of the soil, and the emptiness left by Rome. Why fight for Britain, they thought, when they could take Britain? The peace shattered. Villages that had once welcomed them now burned. The land that had offered them friendship now ran red with blood. Thus began one of the most brutal wars in British history. A war that would reshape the island's destiny forever. For decades, Britain was torn apart by conflict. The Saxons and their kin spread like wildfire, seizing land, burning towns, enslaving or driving out those who resisted. The native Britons fought back with courage and fury. Legends speak of one great war leader, Arthur, the once and future king, who united the tribes and held back the tide. Whether myth or memory, his battles became symbols of hope amid despair. One such victory at Mount Badon was said to have halted the Saxons for a generation. But hope could not hold forever. More ships came, more warriors landed, and the Britons, outnumbered and outmatched, retreated westward, into the wild mountains of Wales and the rugged lands of Cornwall. The east and south fell under Saxon control. Kent, Sussex, Essex, Wessex, new kingdoms rising where Roman towns had fallen. The fires of war burned for centuries. But from those ashes, something new was beginning to form. By the 6th century, the invaders were no longer just raiders, they were settlers. They built wooden halls and thatched villages, cleared forests, and raised their families upon the conquered land. They brought with them their language, the root of what would become English, and their gods, Woden, Thunar, and Tiw. Pagan altars rose where Roman crosses had once stood. They gave new names to the land. Angles land became England, Sikhs land became Sussex and Wessex, East Angle became East Anglia. But unity was far from reach. England was divided among warlords, rival kingdoms locked in endless battles for dominance. Northumbria, Mercia, Wessex, three powers that rose and fell like waves against the shore. Yet through blood and war, a new identity began to take shape. The descendants of Britons and Saxons slowly merged into one people. The Latin of Rome faded, replaced by a rough but powerful new tongue, Old English. In time, the island began to breathe again. The Dark Age was not the end, it was a beginning. In the 7th century, as the wars raged, a quiet revolution began. Not with swords, but with words and faith. From Ireland and Rome came Christian missionaries, carrying the cross and the hope of peace. St. Augustine arrived in Kent, sent by the Pope, and began to convert the pagan kings. The old gods of the north gave way to the new god of the west. Churches rose where temples had fallen, and once again, learning and art began to flourish. Out of these sacred halls came monks who would write the history of their people. From their quills flowed the stories of kings, battles, and bloodlines. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, the foundation of English history itself. By the time of King Alfred the Great, the scattered kingdoms had begun to unite. For the first time, one man ruled over most of the land, England, the land of the English. The Roman world had vanished, but from its ruins a new civilization had risen. Stronger, simpler, and enduring. From the ashes of Rome, a new world emerged. The Anglo-Saxon invasion was not merely a conquest, it was a rebirth. The end of one empire became the beginning of another story, the story of England. The language they spoke, the laws they forged, the spirit they carried, all survive in the heart of Britain today. Every town, every word, every tradition bears the marks of those who crossed the sea in dragon-headed ships. The Angles gave England her name. The Saxons gave her strength. Together they gave her life. And though centuries have passed, the echoes of that age still whisper across the hills, through ruined abbeys and ancient stones, reminding us that out of chaos came a kingdom. This is how England was born, not in peace but in fire. A land shaped by invasion, forged by courage, and destined to endure.